She apologizes for dragging him along with her, then turns with a strange smile, offering to buy him a drink. But his face suddenly contorts with pure terror. He lunges to shove her out of the path of a speeding truck, and in an instant the world fades to black. He slowly opens his eyes, confused. His vision is upside down, his mind a total blur. A panicked shout escapes his lips. He finds himself clinging for dear life to a massive tree branch. Dazed and terrified, he wonders if this is heaven. He wonders if maybe he didn't die after all. His first thought is an overwhelming thirst, and just below him, he spots a river. He scrambles down and desperately splashes his face, drinking deeply from the cool, clear water. A wave of pure, unadulterated relief washes over him. He sits back, trying to process the fact that he's alive. But as the initial shock fades, a new confusion sets in. The sensation of the water on his skin, the scenery, the wind, it all feels too vivid for a dream. He stands tall, realizing this feels no different from being alive. He touches his own skin, confirming that somehow he's still here, and through the trees, he spots a small, isolated cabin. He glances around cautiously, then moves toward the strange building. Peeking through the doorway, he calls out tentatively. He asks if anyone is home, his voice echoing in the silence. Stepping inside, he can tell the place has been empty for a long time. The kitchen and stove are covered in a thick layer of dust. He decides he'll have to stay here for now, with or without permission. But his stomach immediately protests this plan. He's reminded that survival requires more than just shelter. Then, in a dusty corner, a glimmer of hope. He pulls out an old fishing rod, his face lighting up. With renewed purpose, he sprints back toward the river. He kneels by the water's edge, searching for bait. He starts flipping over rocks along the bank, and quickly finds a wriggling worm. He carefully prepares the hook for his first cast. With a determined look, he sends the line flying. The hook breaks the surface, sending ripples outward. The line sits in the water, a silent prayer for food. Suddenly it jerks violently. His eyes light up with shock and excitement. He puts his entire body into it, pulling with a desperate cry, and lands a fish big enough to feed him for days. But his celebration is cut short by a strange sound. A voice in his head tells him his fishing level has gone up. He grabs his temples, convinced he's finally lost it. Then a bizarre, glowing screen materializes in front of him. Apparently, survival now comes with skill trees. He reads the text, confirming his fishing skill has leveled up. He doesn't understand the mechanics, but he knows one fish won't be enough. So with a mighty roar, he decides to catch more. And suddenly, fish after fish are yanked from the river. In no time at all, he's got a respectable haul. He grins, ecstatic with his first successful hunt. But a closer look reveals he's never seen this species before. The strange creature is undeniable proof that he's not on Earth anymore. With his prize in hand, he races back toward the cabin. He remembers seeing a pile of firewood behind the hut, and thankfully finds flint and steel left by the stove. Soon, the strange fish are sizzling over a crackling fire. The sight alone is enough to make his stomach rumble with anticipation. He carefully turns them over the flames, the smell filling the air. And finally, he takes his first glorious bite of food. As he eats, he glances at the strange screen, wondering what to do. That's when another notification pops up out of nowhere. His cooking skill has just leveled up by doing literally anything. He shoves the food down, not wanting to let it get cold, taking a massive, grateful bite. The taste is so incredible, he's literally floored. Despite its strange appearance, the fish is absolutely delicious. He glances outside, remembering something important. He'll need more firewood to last through the night, so he heads out to the woodpile to gather more. But a sudden sound makes him freeze in his tracks. He turns, wondering what could have made that noise, and finds himself face to face with a monstrous wild boar. The beast's eyes are filled with pure, unthinking rage. Our boy can only offer a terrified, awkward smile in return. He stumbles backward, shouting in absolute panic. The monster lowers its head and charges without hesitation. He realizes this thing is seriously angry. Desperate, he looks for anything to use as a shield, and his eyes land on a nearby metal barrel lid. He grabs it just in time to block the boar's attack, as the creature slams into his makeshift shield with incredible force, and he struggles to hold his ground against the brutal impact. He realizes this isn't just a fight for food. It's a fight for his life. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he spots a tool. A desperate idea begins to form in his mind. A rusty pickaxe, his only chance at survival. He dodges the boar's next charge, lunging for the weapon. He has no idea how to use it, but he has to try. The beast turns, stunned by his sudden move. Seeing his opening, he knows this is his only shot. And with all his strength, he brings the pickaxe down. The weapon finds its mark, and the beast cries out in agony. He watches, breathless, unable to believe what just happened. And as the monster falls, he lets out a triumphant roar. But his celebration is interrupted by a familiar notification. A flood of alerts overwhelms him, detailing his new stats. He looks down at his prize, realizing he's safe for now. But as the adrenaline fades, a strange feeling surfaces. It's a sensation he hasn't felt in a very long time. He reflects on his old life and the loneliness he always felt. And with that thought, the exhaustion finally hits him. He collapses onto the ground, utterly spent. But a new idea suddenly sparks in his mind. He decides to make himself a makeshift bath. But first, he'll need plenty of firewood. He grabs the pickaxe he used to fight the boar and starts splitting logs with surprising vigor. He wonders just how many levels this new chore will grant him. With the wood prepared, there's just one thing left. He begins hauling buckets of water from the river, filling the large metal drum can piece by piece. He wipes his brow, realizing this survival stuff is a lot of work. But then a sudden thought strikes him. He remembers the massive boar he just defeated and realizes all that meat is going to spoil if left out. He says a quick prayer over the creature, promising to make good use of it. Then he gets to work with the only tool he has. And just like that, another notification appears. Apparently, you get a skill for literally anything now. With his new dismantling ability, he begins to prepare the meat. He even remembers a trick from a survival show to preserve it in the cold river. But as he's about to enjoy his bath, a crucial detail hits him. He doesn't have a towel, so he decides to search the cabin again. Inside, he notices a small drawer hidden beneath the bed frame. He pulls out a neatly folded piece of white cloth. His face lights up with pure joy. He's found a towel. It's small, but he's just grateful to have found anything at all. And behind it, he discovers 2 sets of clean clothes. They look a bit medieval, but hey, fashion is the least of his worries. With everything ready, he finally dips his hand into the warm water. A look of absolute well-earned bliss spreads across his face. He can't wait a second longer to enjoy his reward. He sinks into the barrel with a sigh of pure relief. This is, without a doubt, the greatest feeling in the world. As he soaks, he thinks about the level-ups, just like in a video game. If this isn't Earth, then what has become of him? The weight of his new reality begins to sink in. He dunks his head, trying to wash away the confusion. But he comes up with a renewed sense of clarity. The food is delicious and the bath feels amazing. And if he can feel all this, it means one simple thing: he's alive. He makes a vow to himself. He will survive in this world. With his mind made up, he decides to explore the area tomorrow. But his moment of peace is cut short by a rustling in the bushes. The next day, he's already out foraging for food. And he's managed to gather a decent amount of mushrooms. But once again, he's alerted by a noise nearby. It seems a month has passed and the boars are back for revenge. And they look even angrier than the last one. But our boy seems completely unfazed by their threats. He's no longer the same person who panicked a month ago. This one is clearly the leader of the pack, scarred and massive. Our boy can only marvel at its sheer size. He realizes they've brought their boss for this little reunion. With a firm grip on his knife, he decides it's time to test just how strong he's become. He nimbly dodges the first massive charge, his eyes filled with a newfound focus. But his counterattack barely scratches the beast's tough hide, and as if one wasn't enough, a goblin rider crashes the party. He's knocked to the ground, staring up at the airborne monster. He scrambles to his feet, a plan already forming. Using a tree to pivot, he realizes the beast's weakness. While it's fast on the ground, it's vulnerable to attacks from above. He lands a solid hit on the massive boar's back, but his eyes widen as he spots his true target. The goblin rider is laughably weak, going down in a single strike. Without its master, the giant boar collapses to the ground. The massive creature lies defeated, its rampage finally over. The 2 smaller boars can only stare in stunned terror. He shouts at them, warning them not to waste their lives. The 2 remaining boars scatter in absolute terror. He turns back to his prize, realizing he's set on meat for a while, but his victory is interrupted by a sudden desperate scream. He glances around, confused by the disembodied voice. The cry for help echoes through the trees once more. He realizes it's coming from deeper within the forest. Without a second thought, he grabs his hatchet and takes off. He sprints through the woods, following the desperate voice. A look of grim determination settles on his face. He pauses for a moment, trying to pinpoint the sound. He leaps down the side of a steep cliff. Scrambling down the rock face with surprising agility, he lands on a ledge, looking down at the source of the commotion. A group of adventurers are surrounded by a horde of angry boars. His eyes widen in surprise at the chaotic scene below. One of the maids cries out desperately for someone to save them. A man barks orders, telling the women to fall back. Their protector tries to hold the line, shielding them from the beasts. A blonde woman shouts that they're hopelessly outnumbered and trapped against the sheer cliff wall with no escape. The man orders his guards to form a defensive formation. The soldiers draw their swords, bracing for the inevitable clash. As the horde of boars thunders toward them, their leader vows that not a single beast will get through. But suddenly, a figure leaps down from the cliff above. It's our boy yelling at the boars to hold their horses. He lands right in the middle of the battlefield, leaving the adventurers completely stunned by his appearance. He glares at the monsters, wondering if he should just turn them all into steak. And just like that, he stands as the sole barrier between the horde and the helpless party. The adventurers can only stare, completely dumbfounded. Even the boars seem to pause, confused by his sudden entrance. He turns back, suddenly remembering the people he just saved. He awkwardly asks if everyone is all right. He tries to explain that the boars are just reckless creatures. The leader of the group watches him with an intense gaze. The man thanks him for the rescue, but our boy just bows humbly. But then he turns back to the boars with a ferocious shout. And just like that, another skill notification pops up. His new intimidation skill sends the entire horde running for the hills. The blonde woman steps forward, offering her sincere thanks. She asks how she could ever possibly repay him for his help. Our boy can only stare back, completely stunned by the offer. But one of the guards suddenly erupts in a frustrated shout. The woman notices, asking if his level has risen abnormally. Our hero awkwardly apologizes for the commotion, explaining that it's his first time meeting anyone out here. The leader introduces himself as Garrett, a traveler who lost his way. The boy finally gives his name, Kazuma, and says he has questions. But he's suddenly struck by a startling realization. He explains that he's been living out here all alone. The revelation hits the group like a shockwave. Garrett shouts in disbelief, asking if he's truly been surviving here by himself. He considers this new information, a thoughtful look on his face. Kazuma just looks around, confused by their intense reaction. Garrett asks Kazuma for a moment to speak with his party in private. One of the maids turns to Garrett, asking what their next move should be. He suggests that since Kazuma knows the forest so well, they should ask him to be their guide. The blonde woman agrees, adding that he did just save all of their lives. The maids listen in, their expressions a mix of agreement and concern. The blonde woman volunteers to speak with him, saying he seems trustworthy. She calls out his name, snapping him out of his thoughts. But instead of asking for his help, she points to her own jewelry. She identifies a rare gem called a grand ruby on the clothes he's wearing. He realizes with childish glee that his gem matches her accessories. A close-up reveals the intricate, high-quality gem. The revelation leaves Garrett and the woman completely speechless. Garrett leans in, shouting that he's never seen a grand ruby of that size. He grabs Kazuma by the shoulders, demanding to know where he found it. He frantically asks if Kazuma is some kind of lost royalty. Kazuma proudly explains that he made the necklace himself. But Garrett isn't interested in the craftsmanship, only the gem's origin. Kazuma simply points deeper into the woods, explaining that he found it in a cave just past a rock fissure. Garrett can't believe it, realizing there's an entire deposit of the gems. Kazuma casually adds that he's never counted them, but they're all over the walls. He estimates there are about 1,000, sending the entire party into a state of shock. He just smiles, completely oblivious to the value of his find. With a grave expression, Garrett formally asks Kazuma to guide them there. Kazuma agrees, noting that it's a bit of a walk from his hut, and so the group sets off into the forest. Kazuma leads them to the hidden rock fissure he mentioned. Garrett peers inside, confirming the entrance is real. He remarks that it's no wonder no one ever found this place. But Kazuma just takes a deep breath, and with a sudden grunt of effort, he begins to pry the massive rock walls apart. Garrett can only scream in utter disbelief at the boy's strength. A few moments later, a spark ignites in the darkness. He lights a torch, warning them to watch their step. He leads them into the darkness, explaining the gems are just ahead. But his expression suddenly shifts to one of alarm. He throws out an arm, telling everyone to get back immediately. He warns them of a lizard, but Garrett seems unimpressed. Then a massive claw grips the rock, reminding him of the boars. A monstrous, rock-skinned creature emerges from the shadows. The rest of the party can only scream in pure terror. Garrett identifies it as a doublegator, a high-ranking monster. The beast looms over Kazuma, ready to crush him. But our boy charges forward, ready to face the giant lizard head-on. Garrett screams at the others to run for their lives. But Kazuma steps forward, torch in hand, ready to fight. He charges the doublegator, ignoring Garrett's cries that it's impossible. The monster raises its colossal foot, catching Kazuma completely by surprise. Garrett can only watch in absolute horror. The boy is sent flying by the sheer force of the attack, but he tightens his grip on his trusty pickaxe, swinging it wildly at the beast's tough exterior. The weapon connects with a deafening crack, but the beast's massive foot falls limp to the ground. The entire party can only stare as the monster lies defeated. Kazuma turns back with a smile, telling them it's just a bit further. He even suggests they take some of the lizard meat on the way out. The adventurers are left completely speechless by his casual power. He just brushes off the life-or-death battle like it was nothing. Garrett realizes this kid isn't just strong. He's an absolute monster. A moment later, Kazuma announces that they've finally arrived. The party gasps, their eyes widening at the sight of 1,000 gems, and Kazuma just starts casually bagging them up for the road. He explains that he's already bagged up a few for them. The party can only stare at the mountain of priceless gems. Garrett holds a handful, shouting that he wasn't lying. He turns to Kazuma with a sudden serious expression. He tells the boy that they have something important to discuss, but Kazuma just cheerfully offers to give him the rubies. Garrett can't comprehend his casual offer of a king's ransom. The others ask if he truly understands what he's saying. He just smiles back, confirming he's happy to share. Garrett explains that this discovery is a matter of national importance. Garrett explains that this wealth could rebuild an entire nation. The word nation catches Kazuma completely off guard. He turns back, confused by the sudden gravity of the situation. The rest of the party watches the exchange in silence, but Kazuma just smiles, saying he's happy to help their cause. He even offers to help them carry the gems out of the cave. But before he can, the blonde woman steps forward with a request. She addresses him formally, capturing his full attention. Her eyes are filled with a quiet, desperate plea. She asks if he would consider traveling with them for a while. He presents them with a bag practically bursting with gems. Kazuma can only ask if she's really talking to him. He's completely taken aback by the sudden request. His eyes widen, unable to process what's happening. She gently takes his hand, her touch full of sincerity. She explains that her party is being hunted and they need his help. Kazuma looks away, the weight of her words sinking in. He's never been needed by anyone before in his life, but a part of him is curious about the world outside his forest. A single tear falls as he makes his decision. A small, determined smile forms on his face. The woman watches him, her expression full of hope. With a bright smile, Kazuma agrees to join them for a while. The party erupts in gratitude, thanking him for his help. With the decision made, they get back to hauling out the gems. Garrett pants, announcing they've finally gathered everything. But a sudden flash of light from outside the cave stops them cold. Kazuma's eyes widen, wondering what that could possibly be. He turns to Garrett, who looks absolutely terrified. A monstrous figure blocks the exit, and Garrett screams for Kazuma to help. Kazuma and Garrett can only scream in absolute terror. He stares up at the colossal figure, realizing it's a giant. The rest of the party is frozen in utter disbelief. One of the guards identifies the beast as a tataros. The maids can only watch, paralyzed by fear. It's an A-rank monster, and their only hope is to run. Kazuma wonders if he even stands a chance against it. Garrett shoves the blonde woman behind him, trying to shield her. He steps forward to face the monster alone. A look of grim resolve settles on his face, but Kazuma ignores him, raising his weapon with a determined look. Garrett screams that an A-rank monster is far too reckless an opponent. Kazuma looks up, a strange feeling of unease washing over him. The beast just grins, its expression one of pure malice. It towers over him, a mountain of muscle and rock. Kazuma tightens his grip, realizing he might have been overconfident. Even with all his strength, the monster doesn't even flinch. Garrett can only scream his name in absolute terror. But a sudden realization dawns in Kazuma's eyes. Just as the Tataros raises its colossal fist to strike, he refuses to let the monster have its way. His eyes dart upward, spotting a weakness in the cave ceiling. With a determined cry, he prepares to strike. He swings his pickaxe not at the beast, but at the rock above. The Tataros looks up, confused by his strange tactic, and a shower of massive boulders begins to rain down. Kazuma dives out of the way of his own trap. He watches the cave-in he created, his plan in motion. He leaps across the falling rocks, knowing this won't be a simple fight. The monster is surprisingly fast, and its strength is off the charts. He realizes this has to be a battle of attrition. If he can just hold out long enough, he can keep chipping away at the cave itself. And with every swing, his level will continue to rise. He puts everything he has into the desperate strategy. The adventurers can only watch, noticing his movements getting faster. With every single impact against the stone, he grows stronger while the beast roars in frustration. He unleashes a flurry of powerful strikes. He lands, ready for whatever comes next. He lets out a defiant cry, putting everything into one final swing. And with a thunderous crash, the mighty Tataros finally falls. He sees his opening, knowing this is his only chance. He leaps into the air, spinning with impossible speed, and brings the pickaxe down with devastating force. Garrett can only stare, muttering that he actually defeated an A-rank monster alone. The party looks on as the dust settles around the fallen giant, but Kazuma is on his knees panting from the sheer exhaustion. Garrett approaches, asking if he can see Kazuma's status screen. Kazuma agrees, admitting he's ignored it because of all the annoying notifications. He pulls up the status screen and the party leans in to look. Their eyes widen in a state of pure, unadulterated shock. The screen displays a single, impossible number, level 259. Garrett stumbles back, finally understanding the source of his power. A level that high is unheard of, even for a legendary A-rank adventurer. Garrett reveals his own level is a mere 102, less than half of Kazuma's. The woman wonders what kind of life he must have lived to get so strong. Kazuma just scratches his head, trying to explain his simple routine. He casually mentions a place he used for a bit of practice, and points to a distant rock formation shaped like a rabbit's head. He bends down, picking up a simple stone from the ground. He holds it up with a grin, telling them to watch this, and with a powerful heave, he sends the rock flying. It smashes into the distant formation with a surprising crack. Garrett and the others can only stare, wondering what he's trying to prove, until a familiar screen pops up confirming his practice method. His stone-throwing skill just jumped 9 levels in a single throw. He just smiles, announcing that he's going again. He winds up, putting even more power into the next toss. The second stone streaks through the air like a cannonball, and this time it shatters a huge chunk of the rock face. The sound of the impact echoes across the valley. The entire party can only stare, their minds completely blown. Another screen pops up, confirming his skill jumped another 12 levels. The woman notes that his speed and power were on a different level. Kazuma just looks at his hand, trying to downplay his own strength. He awkwardly explains that he thinks he just levels up faster than others, as if being a walking cheat code is just a minor quirk. But Garrett's expression is one of deadly seriousness. He realizes what an incredible gift Kazuma possesses. Garrett and the woman call out to Kazuma, their voices filled with urgency. The blonde woman's expression hardens with resolve, announcing she's made a decision that leaves Kazuma looking utterly lost. She formally asks if he would consider joining their party not just for a while, but for good. One of the guards admits it's a shameless request, given all he's done for them. But the woman explains that their situation is desperate, and they need all the help they can get. She bows her head, ready to accept his answer, whatever it may be. Her sudden, humble plea leaves Garrett completely stunned. But Kazuma just smiles, happily agreeing without a second thought. Her eyes widen, a glimmer of hope shining through her disbelief. He smiles, saying he'd be honored to join them. He explains that he knows this forest better than anyone, and he can't just leave them to fend for themselves. He even vows to do everything in his power to protect them. Garrett and the woman formally welcome him to the party. The two share a lighthearted moment, their journey now joined. And so, with their new powerhouse in tow, the group sets off. It doesn't take long for the others to see his incredible skill. He effortlessly carves a path through the dangerous woods, leaving the seasoned guards completely in awe of his power. Kazuma cheerfully explains his training method, swinging his pickaxe wildly. He brings it down on a log, shattering it instantly. Both he and Garrett stare in shock at the splintered remains. Garrett falls to his knees, crying out over his own weapon, which was destroyed in the fight. The party gathers, believing Kazuma has finally reached his breaking point. One of the guards, a man with a topknot, voices his concern. But the blonde woman simply smiles, telling him it's all right. She explains that they have no choice but to rely on Kazuma's power. They review his stats, confirming that while his level is unmatched, his attack power isn't. She suggests that their best course of action is to maximize his damage potential. She asks if his power is enough to overcome the road ahead. The top-knotted guard seems to have his doubts. But the woman just smiles, a new plan already in motion. She announces they'll do what they can to prepare for the coming raid. The guard realizes what she's implying. She glances back at the group, her decision made. But as Kazuma grips his pickaxe, the handle begins to splinter and crack. He looks down in a panic, realizing his only weapon is failing him. The woman tells him to hold still for a moment. And with a gentle touch, she begins to channel a strange energy into the broken tool. The rest of the party watches, confused by this sudden turn. She tells him this will only take a moment. She addresses Kazuma directly, her voice soft but firm. She apologizes for dragging him into their troubles, and formally asks him to continue lending them his strength. The other guards can only watch with grim acceptance. But Kazuma's eyes light up as he vows to do his best. The top-knotted guard then offers him a sword to replace his axe. Kazuma is stunned, as if he's never held a real weapon before. He takes it, his hands trembling with the weight of his new role. He stares at the blade, its sharp edge reflecting in his eyes. He can't help but marvel at how pristine the weapon is. The guard then presents him with a set of armor to match. The woman insists it's the least they can do after his help. With a little assistance, he gets suited up for the journey ahead. He's shocked by how light the new gear feels. With this, he feels confident enough to take on anything. The woman can only smile at his infectious enthusiasm. He promises to do his best to protect them all. And so, their newly equipped protector leads them onward. The top-knotted guard suddenly stops, shielding his eyes from the sun. He points toward the horizon, announcing they've finally spotted a town. The others are overjoyed, relieved to finally reach civilization. Kazuma listens as they dream of eating at a real restaurant, the very concept of which seems to be a brand new idea for him. The rest of the party erupts in a cheer, their long journey nearly over. But the top-knotted guard's expression hardens, warning them not to relax. The others snap to attention, acknowledging the order. He turns to the blonde woman, asking for their next course of action. She calmly explains their first priority is to secure a horse and carriage. She assigns Kazuma the role of carriage guard and tells him he'll be riding with the maids. Kazuma can only agree, a bit stunned by the new arrangement. The top-knotted guard then lays out the rest of the plan. They'll need to procure disguises and other supplies. Their cover story is that they're merchants from a foreign kingdom, a disguise that shouldn't arouse any suspicion in this region. By posing as members of a famous merchant guild, they'll be able to move freely. With the plan set, the guard hoists a heavy bag onto his shoulder. The woman watches on, confident in their new strategy, but Kazuma looks a little overwhelmed by the sudden change of pace. A sign announces their arrival at the town. The party finally passes through the main gates into civilization. They blend into the bustling streets, disguised in hooded cloaks. Their merchant disguise seems to be working perfectly, though Kazuma feels like they're sticking out like a sore thumb. But Garrett quickly dismisses his concerns with the promise of food. He tells everyone to eat their fill while they have the chance, and soon the entire party is enjoying a massive feast. Someone even offers Kazuma a plate of his own. He gratefully takes his first bite of town food. The entire party eats with gusto, enjoying the meal. Soon, the massive feast has been completely devoured. Every single plate is left spotless. Kazuma lets out a sigh, amazed by the delicious meal. But their moment of peace is shattered by the arrival of soldiers. Kazuma's eyes narrow as he watches them pass. The troop comes to a halt in the middle of the square. As their leader shouts that he's looking for someone, he calls for anyone with information to step forward. Kazuma watches them, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. A wanted poster flutters to the ground, dropped by a passing soldier, and on it is a face he knows all too well. The blonde woman's eyes widen in a mix of shock and fury. She quickly pulls her hood down, trying to hide her identity. Kazuma and the others stare at the poster, the pieces clicking into place. He can't believe what he's seeing. The captain announces a massive reward for any information on Princess Arias. Kazuma finally understands. The woman he's been protecting is royalty, and now he knows exactly why they're being hunted. A new resolve hardens in Kazuma's eyes. The top-knotted guard quickly forms a plan, telling Kazuma they're leaving through the back exit. With no time to waste, the entire party makes a run for it. The guard leads them through a series of back alleys, slipping through the restaurant's kitchen to avoid the soldiers. They quickly prepare their horse and carriage for a swift departure. And just like that, they're on the road again, leaving the town behind. The guard keeps a watchful eye, knowing the danger isn't over yet. Inside the carriage, Kazuma sits ready to defend the princess at all costs, but their escape is cut short by a sudden stop. A troop of soldiers blocks their path, demanding they halt. The captain questions their large group and their destination, but the top-knotted guard remains perfectly calm. The soldiers seem suspicious of their claim to be from Ordena. The guard explains they're simply merchants returning home. He confidently claims they're from the famous Barn Merchant Guild. The captain seems to buy it, asking if their business was successful. The guard offers to show him a sample of their wares. He presents a roll of fine fabric, a convincing piece of proof. The captain inspects the fabric, a satisfied smile on his face. But the guard's eyes remain sharp, watching his every move. The captain hands it back, wishing them a safe journey home. The guard offers a respectful nod, thanking him for his consideration. But his expression remains tense, knowing they aren't safe yet. Inside the carriage, the maids exchange worried glances. Kazuma can only hold his breath, the tension palpable. The carriage begins to roll forward, their escape almost too easy. But the captain suddenly shouts, ordering them to stop. And Kazuma's heart sinks, realizing they've been caught. The top-knotted guard asks if there's a problem. The captain repeats the question, his tone laced with suspicion. He recalls their claim of carrying a specific type of fabric, and the guard can only confirm, his face a mask of calm. But the captain points out a flaw in their story, demanding to inspect the cargo to see for himself. A jolt of pure panic runs through Kazuma. He realizes their simple bluff has just been called. The princess's eyes widen, her own fear mirroring his. Kazuma can only stare, understanding they are in serious trouble. The carriage grinds to a halt under the captain's orders. The wheels creak, a sound that echoes the party's rising panic. The captain shouts again, his patience clearly wearing thin. He declares their cargo suspicious and orders a full inspection. He turns to his men, ready to give the command. In an instant, the carriage is completely surrounded. One of the soldiers pulls back the curtain to peek inside. He reports back to his captain, confirming there's fabric, but the captain asks what's hiding behind the pile of goods. The top-knotted guard can only sweat, realizing their cover is blown. The captain's eyes narrow, recalling a crucial detail. But the top-knotted guard erupts with a new insane story about forgotten sheep. Kazuma is left completely speechless by this sudden change in script. He frantically asks the princess what on earth is happening. The guard continues his wild performance, trying to sell the absurd lie. The captain just smiles, clearly enjoying the ridiculous display. He repeats the words, "fat sheep," his voice laced with disbelief, and in a flash his blade is drawn. The princess can only watch in terror as their bluff completely fails. The captain roars, shouting that there's no way he'd fall for such a pathetic story. Kazuma and the princess share a look of pure panic. The captain points, roaring that he's finally found them. But the top-knotted guard moves in a flash, his blade already drawn. In an instant, the street erupts into a chaotic sword fight. And just as quickly, the soldiers are left defeated on the ground. The guard shouts for everyone to break through and escape the town. The party scrambles to follow his lead, their escape now a desperate flight. But Kazuma is frozen, his eyes wide with utter horror. The princess stares back, realizing people just died for her. He's pale and sweating, completely shaken by the brutal reality of their fight. He clutches his head, a sudden pain shooting through him. He collapses inside the carriage, his mind reeling. A strange voice echoes in his thoughts, telling him not to be concerned. He wonders where this disembodied voice is coming from. The princess leans over him, asking whose voice he's hearing. A strange vision flashes before his eyes, of the guard in peril. The princess's worried voice snaps him back to reality. His eyes fly open, the strange sensation fading. He quickly reassures her that everything is all right. And with that, the carriage thunders onward, leaving the town behind. The top-knotted guard shouts that they're breaking through. Kazuma yells back, confirming he understands the plan. But more soldiers block the path to the city gates. One of them steps forward, demanding they stop. But the guard doesn't even slow down. As the soldiers shout in anger at their escape attempt, Garrett rides alongside, clearing a path for the carriage. They barrel through the guards with unstoppable force. Their only goal is the blinding light of the exit ahead. And just like that, they've escaped the city's grasp. The princess shouts in relief as they finally break through the gate. But the guard warns her to get back inside, as their pursuers are close behind. And sure enough, a troop of soldiers gives chase on horseback. The carriage barrels down the road, the soldiers closing in fast. The top-knotted guard turns to Kazuma, apologizing for dragging him into this. He begs him to protect the princess, explaining that their kingdom is at stake. The maids agree, calling her their last hope for the future. Kazuma looks on, worried about the sacrifices they're all making. The guard shouts his name one last time, putting all his faith in the boy. And with that, the two outriders gallop onward, ready for the fight ahead. The two guards charge headfirst into the pursuing soldiers. The top-knotted guard cuts down his first opponent in a flash, and the battlefield erupts into a storm of chaos. Kazuma can only watch from the carriage, his face pale with shock. He realizes that if he doesn't intervene, they'll all be wiped out. But he's still paralyzed by the brutal reality of the fight. That's when the strange voice returns, telling him he's a transcendent being. Outside, a desperate battle cry cuts through the air. The top-knotted guard fights with the fury of a cornered animal, his only goal to ensure the princess survives. A sudden memory flashes through Kazuma's mind. The moment he sacrificed himself to save another, he remembers the desperate need to protect someone, and the vow he made in that final instant. A fire ignites in his eyes, his hesitation completely gone. He can't remember the details of his past life, but he remembers this feeling, and he refuses to let anyone else suffer on his watch. With a powerful shout, he tells the others to trust him. The top-knotted guard looks back, stunned by his sudden command. But he relays the order, telling everyone to follow Kazuma's lead. He realizes the cargo is too heavy to move while they're speeding along. But a sudden idea strikes him. He grabs a loose rope, a new plan forming. He climbs to the back of the carriage and yanks the rope free from the canvas. He ties it securely around his waist, vowing that he won't let them be left behind. He crouches on the edge, taking a deep breath, and with a mighty leap, he launches himself into the fray. He descends upon the soldiers like a storm, ready to end this chase. He swings into the fray like a pendulum of death, landing right in the heart of the enemy formation. The impact sends a shockwave through the dirt. As he moves with a speed that leaves the soldiers stunned, even the top-knotted guard can't believe this reckless tactic. The enemy captain orders his archers to open fire. They draw their bows, taking aim at the boy, and unleash a volley of deadly arrows. But Kazuma uses the rope to swing clear of the attack. Realizing he's completely surrounded and in serious trouble, he shouts in alarm as an arrow strikes the carriage. Inside, one of the maids cries out, an arrow in her leg. The princess immediately declares that she will heal the wound. A strange glowing energy emanates from her hands. Kazuma looks back, stunned by the display of actual magic. The sight is just another reminder that he's not in Kansas anymore, but another volley of arrows rains down on them. He lands back on the roof, realizing he has no time to be shocked. He knows he has to deal with the archers, and fast. But the carriage wheel suddenly hits a rock, threatening to overturn. He's thrown from the roof by the sudden violent jolt, but his eyes land on another bundle of rope inside the carriage. And a ridiculously reckless idea is born. He swings back into the fray, taking out a soldier with a flying kick, and in a single fluid motion, he commandeers the man's horse. With a triumphant shout, he's suddenly part of the cavalry. He quickly ties the spare rope to the reins of his new ride, his eyes burning with a new, insane strategy. He links his horse to the other guards, creating a 3-man vanguard. And with a single command, he leads the charge against their pursuers. The top-knotted guard clashes with a soldier in a blur of steel, while Kazuma leaps from his own horse, using an enemy soldier as a stepping stone. His insane rope trick sends the enemy cavalry into a tailspin. The entire formation collapses into a tangled mess of horses and men. He glances back at the chaos, his plan a resounding success. The top-knotted guard can only shout in awe at his incredible horsemanship. Kazuma points ahead, telling them to ride for a narrow valley. The guard acknowledges the order without hesitation, and Kazuma leads the charge, batting away arrows as they fly. But their pursuers are suddenly cut down by a mysterious new arrival. A man with a cruel smile decides it's time for him to join the fun. As the carriage continues its desperate flight from the battlefield, Kazuma and the guards are still locked in a chaotic struggle for survival. He clashes with a soldier who seems to underestimate the boy's resolve. His new blade flashes in the sun, a testament to his promise. The top-knotted guard fights with incredible skill, clearing a path. But the mysterious newcomer effortlessly sweeps aside soldier after soldier. He seems to be enjoying the fight, a smirk never leaving his face. Kazuma can only stare, realizing this man is attacking everyone indiscriminately. The mysterious rider identifies Kazuma as his next target. He sneers, offering to teach the boy a lesson in respect. Kazuma rides up beside him, furious at his reckless violence. The newcomer's smile fades, replaced by a cold glare. But Kazuma just shouts back, calling him out for his cruelty. The man's eyes widen, stunned by the boy's audacity. And in a flash, his blade is swinging toward Kazuma's head. Kazuma throws himself backward, barely dodging the lethal strike. The attacker pivots with blinding speed and presses the tip of his spear right against Kazuma's throat. The spear grazes his chest, drawing first blood. The attacker's smile widens, a picture of pure sadism. But Kazuma shouts back, his fear replaced by defiance. He realizes this man is a master of the spear. Their weapons connect in a shower of sparks. Kazuma grits his teeth, holding his ground with all his might. His opponent just smirks, enjoying the boy's struggle. He parries Kazuma's attack with effortless grace. He laughs, impressed that Kazuma could block his A-rank spear. But his eyes narrow, promising to punish him for his audacity. Kazuma struggles to hold back the powerful thrust. Realizing his opponent is another A-rank fighter, the revelation explains the man's incredible strength. But he remembers the giant he just defeated, and finds a new surge of confidence. The attacker just sneers, amused by his defiance. He laughs, declaring that Kazuma's luck has finally run out. But help is already on the way. The top-knotted guard charges into the fray, ready to even the odds against the sadistic spearman. He leaps from his own horse, sword ready to strike, but the spearman effortlessly blocks the attack with a spin. He just smiles, completely unfazed by the 2-on-1 fight. Kazuma stares in shock, noticing something strange about the spear. A dark, ominous energy seems to be radiating from the weapon. He can't quite understand what he's seeing. The spearman's smile widens, asking if Kazuma can see his aura. Kazuma wonders aloud about the strange black smoke. The attacker boasts that his sacred weapon is on another level entirely, and prepares to show Kazuma exactly what that means. The dark energy coalesces around the spear. Forming into a shadowy, claw-like shape, he unleashes a special attack, a black wind corrosion. Kazuma watches in horror as a serpent of pure darkness lunges from the smoke. The creature's fangs clamp down hard on his blade, and his pristine sword begins to corrode and dissolve on contact. The spearman presses his advantage, knocking Kazuma off balance. The attack leaves another gash across his chest. His opponent just smirks, enjoying the one-sided beatdown. He roars, moving in for the final decisive blow. The spearman's smile is pure evil as he prepares the final blow. Kazuma can only watch in horror as the attack descends. He's sent flying backward, crying out from the force of the impact. His brand new sword is knocked from his grasp, clattering uselessly onto the dirt road. Kazuma grits his teeth, completely disarmed and at his opponent's mercy. The attacker looms over him, ready to end this once and for all. He lets out a quiet, sadistic chuckle, which quickly builds into a full-blown maniacal laugh. He roars that this is the end of the line for our hero. But the spearman pauses, confused by the boy's sudden calm. Kazuma grits his teeth, saying he doesn't care what kind of artifact it is. Because if he can just get his hands on it, it's his... He lunges forward, grabbing the cursed spear with his bare hands. The attacker warns him that this is where the real pain begins. But Kazuma's grip is like a vice, refusing to let go. His eyes suddenly widen in pure, agonizing shock. The spearman just smiles, revealing the weapon's true, terrifying nature. A wave of unadulterated horror washes over Kazuma's face. And once again, his world begins to fade away. He realizes with dawning horror that the spear is poisoned. The attacker boasts that it's his own special venom-laced creation. He tells Kazuma to enjoy the slow, agonizing effects of the poison. A wave of pure, unadulterated pain washes over our hero. He grits his teeth, trying to fight through the searing agony. The spearman sneers that such a weapon is wasted on a pathetic boy. But Kazuma's eyes burn with a sudden renewed fire. He roars back, vowing that he absolutely will not lose. The attacker is stunned, unable to believe his sudden defiance. And Kazuma begins to pull back, his strength somehow returning. With a furious roar, he begins to wrench the weapon away. The attacker can only stare, wondering what this kid is made of. He's pulled forward, completely overpowered by Kazuma's brute strength. Kazuma grits his teeth, pouring every ounce of will into the fight. A crazed smile spreads across his face as he vows to never forgive him. The dark energy of the spear seems to recoil from his touch, and with a mighty heave, he sends the spearman flying. The attacker can only scream as he's swung around like a toy. Kazuma uses the man's own momentum against him, and slams him hard into the unforgiving ground. The spearman crashes to the ground, his body limp. He looks up, a pained and disbelieving grunt escaping his lips. Kazuma stands over him, asking how that felt, but he immediately stumbles, his body finally giving in to the poison. He grits his teeth, sweat pouring down his face as the venom spreads. The attacker just licks his lips, a cruel smile returning. He boasts that Kazuma can't win, revealing the spear is coated in wyvern poison. He tells him to just enjoy the ride and die already. But Kazuma just glares back, asking if this was supposed to be a lesson. The spearman is left completely speechless by his sheer defiance. He shouts back to his allies, calling for help. He tells the guard to retrieve the spear, but not to keep it. But the guard is too busy screaming about his runaway horse, which has apparently decided it's had enough of this fight. Kazuma watches the spearman retreat, his heart pounding. He grits his teeth, the poison coursing through his veins. The attacker stumbles away, cursing Kazuma's name. He flees on horseback, his prize still in hand. Kazuma can only watch, the venom taking its toll. A wave of agony washes over him as his vision blurs. He collapses to his knees, the poison finally overwhelming him. A dark, viscous substance splatters across the ground. His eyes are wide with shock and searing agony, but a sudden thought cuts through the haze of pain. He remembers Princess Arius and the others in the carriage. A new wave of panic washes over him. He knows he can't let them get away without him. Once they leave the canyon, they'll be completely exposed. From the carriage, the guard and princess shout his name. The princess looks back, her eyes filled with terror. But his eyes burn with a grim, unwavering determination. He pushes himself up, knowing what he has to do. The top-knotted guard looks back, understanding the sacrifice. Kazuma shouts for them to go on without him, promising that he'll catch up to them later. He plants his feet, ready to make his final stand. and with the cursed spear in hand, he faces the army alone. The soldiers advance, clearly not realizing who they're up against. The poison continues to eat away at his armor and his body. The princess can only watch in horror as he's left behind. His eyes burn with a fire that defies the poison. The princess cries out his name as he's left behind. The top-knotted guard can only look back with grim resolve. As the princess watches in absolute horror, he orders her to get back, to honor the boy's sacrifice. He shouts that Kazuma has entrusted them with their future, but she refuses to accept such a senseless act. Kazuma's only thought is for them to escape this canyon. Their duty is to reach the kingdom of Ordana, no matter the cost. And Garrett whips the reins, his face a mask of pure panic. Her hand grips the carriage, her voice trembling with his name. She shouts that he's staying behind to fight them all alone. But the guard's face is a mask of grim, unwavering duty. He reminds her of the consequences if she's captured, that her entire kingdom will suffer for her failure. He begs her to endure this and escape while she still can. The princess looks back, her resolve beginning to crumble. She bows her head, the weight of the sacrifice crushing her. A single tear falls as she whispers his name one last time, and finally she breaks down, her cries echoing in the canyon. Her hands clench into fists, trembling with rage and sorrow. She questions what good a nation is, or a princess, if she can't even protect her own people. She's ashamed of her own weakness, haunted by the smiling faces of those who protect her. A wave of pure, agonizing regret washes over her. The top-knotted guard tells her he understands her pain, but now is not the time. His eyes are filled with a grim, unwavering resolve. Their only path forward is to break through this despair. She calls out to Garrett, her voice choked with tears. But the guard vows they will not hesitate to give their lives for their kingdom. He vows they will rebuild their nation in her name. The princess can only listen, her heart heavy with grief. But through the tears, a new fire begins to burn in her eyes. She wipes away her sorrow, her expression hardening with a queen's resolve. She knows there is no other choice. She declares that they will reach Ordana no matter what it takes. The guard agrees, vowing to honor Kazuma's sacrifice. But a familiar voice asks what they mean by sacrifice. The entire party turns, stunned to see Kazuma riding right beside them. The spearman reports back to his commander, their ambush a failure. But Kazuma emerges from the canyon, looking no worse for wear. The princess and her maids can only stare in utter disbelief. Even the top-knotted guard is left speechless by his impossible return. He asks how Kazuma could have possibly recovered from such a wound. Kazuma admits that at first the poison was pretty rough. The princess listens, hanging on his every word. But as he kept fighting, it gradually got easier because of course it did. The guard is still trying to process this impossible explanation. He asks for a straight answer, but Kazuma seems just as confused. Kazuma just smiles, asking if getting used to it is an answer. The guard can only stare, trying to process this logic. He shouts that it's completely impossible. But Kazuma just flexes, showing he's perfectly fine. The princess calls out his name, her voice full of worry. But a sudden realization flashes in his eyes. The guard's expression shifts to alarm as well. The princess loses her balance, crying out as she falls from the carriage. Kazuma lunges forward, desperately reaching out to catch her. And in a flash, he pulls her safely onto his own horse. He holds her close, both of them stunned by the sudden rescue. The princess erupts in a tearful shout, overwhelmed with relief and anger. But he just closes his eyes, a quiet calm washing over him. Back in the carriage, the princess uses her magic to heal his wounds. She apologizes for her earlier outburst. Her composure returned. She recalls the moment she thought he was lost for good. Kazuma just looks away, a little embarrassed by the attention. He insists that he was the one who caused her all the worry. But their conversation is cut short by another violent jolt. They look outside, realizing their troubles are far from over. The top-knotted guard shouts for them to stop the carriage. Garrett frantically pulls on the reins, trying to halt their momentum. The horses struggle, finally bringing the carriage to a halt. Kazuma leaps down from the carriage, landing on the ground to inspect the problem. His eyes widen as he spots the issue. He points out that the axle is completely bent. The guard realizes if it breaks, they're completely stranded. They decide to hide the carriage in a nearby thicket to make repairs, and with a combined effort, they begin to push it off the road. The wheel is completely warped, their journey halted for now. They find a secluded spot to hide and assess the damage. While the others work, Kazuma inspects the broken axle, but the top-knotted guard calls him aside for a moment. Kazuma looks back, confused by the sudden request. He follows the guard away from the carriage, dragging the cursed spear he claimed as his own. The guard leads him to a clearing where the princess is waiting. She and her maids are kneeling, a gesture of deep respect. The princess looks up, her eyes filled with a solemn purpose. Kazuma looks on, confused by the guard's sudden intensity. The guard suddenly drops to his knees before him. Kazuma sits there, wondering what on earth is happening. The guard begins to speak, his voice filled with gravity. He formally thanks Kazuma for getting them through the Imperial ambush, and then he bows his head to the ground in the ultimate sign of respect. Kazuma scrambles back, frantically telling them to stop. The princess, however, accepts the gesture with quiet grace. He begs them to raise their heads, saying he's just glad they're safe. But the guard isn't finished, beginning a heartfelt apology. He confesses he was prepared to abandon Kazuma to buy them time. He admits it was a cold, calculated, and shameful decision. But Kazuma just looks back, completely lost by the confession. He stammers, trying to find the right words to say. He tells the guard that protecting the princess is his sworn duty. The princess then interjects, asking him to call her by her name. Kazuma is completely flustered by the sudden lack of formality. The guard seems less than thrilled with this casual turn of events. He clears his throat, trying to regain control of the situation. But ultimately, he defers to the princess's wishes with a smile. Kazuma stammers, trying to agree to her request. Arias offers a warm smile, pleased by his acceptance. He looks back, a little embarrassed but clearly happy. But the serious atmosphere hasn't completely lifted. Arias explains that she also has something to apologize for. Kazuma can only ask what she could possibly mean. She confesses that she intentionally hid her true identity from him, and bows her head, ashamed of the necessary deception. But Kazuma just brushes it off, saying it was unavoidable for a princess. She looks up, touched by his simple, unwavering kindness. With the air cleared, Arias decides to reintroduce herself properly. She reveals her full name, Arias Som Alessandros, first princess of the Aldebaran kingdom. Kazuma can only gape, stunned by her incredibly regal name. He quickly offers his own name in return, Nakamichi Kazuma. Arias seems a bit confused, asking if Kazuma is his family name. He clarifies that Kazuma is his first name, not his last. He then mutters that in this world, he should probably say it the other way around. But Arias immediately latches onto his strange choice of words. The top-knotted guard shoots him a warning glare as Kazuma panics. He realizes with dawning horror that he's just let a massive secret slip. He decides that since she was honest, he should be too. The guard presses him, asking what he meant by this world. Kazuma hesitates, sweating as he prepares to reveal the truth. He finally admits that he's not a native of their world. The confession leaves Arias and her maid completely stunned. The top-knotted guard's eyes narrow with suspicion. The others can only listen, trying to process the impossible news. Arias asks if he's saying there's another world entirely. He looks up at her, confirming her suspicion is correct, and explains that he was somehow transported here from his home. Arias asks him to clarify what he means by being transported. Kazuma explains his theory that his arrival wasn't accidental, but that he was intentionally summoned here by some unknown will. He recalls the strange voice he heard during the fight, the one that called him a transcendent being. He realizes the word implies someone who can cross between worlds and remembers a final ominous message. The pieces of the puzzle are slowly starting to click into place. Arias's voice snaps him out of his deep thoughts. He admits that being in a different world has given him a lot to process. She asks just how different his home world really is. He starts by explaining that things like status screens and levels simply don't exist where he's from. He explains that at first, he was just as shocked by the constant level-up notifications. Arias asks to see his current status, and Kazuma admits he turned off the notifications. He pulls up the screen for them to see, and the entire party is left completely speechless. Their shock quickly turns into pure, unadulterated disbelief. The screen displays a single impossible number, level 885. Kazuma asks if that's a high number, completely oblivious. Arias recalls that the last time she saw it, he was only level 259. The guard explains that at this rate, he's already approaching the legendary S rank. But Kazuma can only wonder how he got so strong in the first place. He asks if he really fought that hard to get so strong, but Arias shouts that something is completely missing from his stats. She points out that the sections for MP and magic are just gone. Kazuma just looks back, completely baffled. He asks if that's something everyone is supposed to have. The very concept of magic seems to be a new revelation for him. He nervously turns to the others, a question on his lips. He recalls her healing the maid, asking if that was magic. Arias just stares, a little taken aback by his question. Even her maid seemed confused by his total lack of knowledge. Arias gently explains that she used healing magic on him before. The realization finally hits Kazuma. Magic is actually real. He confirms that his world had nothing like it, which is why he was so surprised. Arias theorizes that this is why his status screen has no MP or magic stats, a fact that seems to short-circuit Kazuma's entire brain. But he quickly recovers, saying he has just one more question. The top-knotted guard suddenly grabs the spear, demanding to know what this artifact is. Kazuma stammers, trying to explain where he got the weapon. He recalls the sadistic spearman who was wielding it during their last battle. The guard's expression hardens, a bead of sweat rolling down his face. The guard pinches his brow, trying to place the memory. He explains that he's heard of a warrior matching that description. A notorious imperial unit known as the Black Snakes, led by a man named Souza, a man infamous for his ruthless skill in combat. Kazuma confirms the man called his weapon the Blue Dragon Spear. The entire group falls silent at the mention of that name. He looks around, confused by their sudden grave expressions. But Arias's face hardens with a cold, righteous fury. She reveals that the spear is one of her kingdom's stolen treasures. A revelation that leaves Kazuma completely and utterly stunned. She explains it was stolen from the royal treasury, likely by the Empire. Kazuma realizes that's why Souza wasn't a natural with the weapon. He knows this spear must be returned to its rightful owner, and so he offers the legendary artifact back to the princess. But her hands gently push the weapon back toward him. Kazuma can only look on, completely confused by her refusal. She believes it was divine will that brought the spear to him, and asks that he continue to wield it in their defense. He accepts the weight of this new, incredible responsibility. The top-knotted guard watches on with a look of quiet approval. Arias and her maids watch him, their faith renewed. He looks back, his eyes burning with determination. He swears on the spear that he will protect them all. The top-knotted guard is moved by his unwavering loyalty. But then his eyes catch a strange detail on the spear. He asks Kazuma about a specific part of the weapon. He realizes Souza modified it to release poison on command. But Kazuma just yanks on it, revealing it's just glued on. The guard can only duck as Kazuma swings it around carelessly. Guess a legendary weapon is only as smart as its wielder. The guard warns him to be careful, as the spear is still rigged with poison. Arias notices Kazuma's distant expression, asking if something is wrong. But the top-knotted guard realizes something far more terrifying. If Souza and the Black Snakes were here, it means their true pursuers are the Empire's strongest division, the Grunwald. Arias's face pales, understanding the gravity of that name. The guard repeats it, his voice filled with grim certainty. Kazuma can only look on, completely lost. He asks if this new enemy is really that much of a threat. The guard confirms they are without a doubt the strongest force in the region. He explains that the Grunwald division is leading the invasion of their kingdom. He grits his teeth, the weight of his nation's fate on his shoulders. He turns to the others, the grim reality of their situation setting in. But Arias suddenly remembers something important. She brings up the topic of artifacts, which they'd discussed earlier. Kazuma is still lost, asking if they were really made by gods. She confirms that most are weapons or armor, just like the spear he now holds. The revelation hits Kazuma hard, wondering if gods are actually real here. But he shakes it off, realizing there are more pressing matters at hand. He asks her to tell him more about her kingdom, Aldebaran. The guard confirms that their kingdom was invaded by the Belgan Empire. He explains it was a surprise attack at dawn, just 3 days before they met Kazuma. A flashback shows the Imperial army swarming their borders without warning. The sheer scale of the invasion quickly overwhelmed their defenses. The memory is clearly a heavy and painful one for all of them. The guard's expression is a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. Arias closes her eyes, her silence confirming the tragic story. Kazuma hesitantly asks about the fate of her father, the king. Her answer hits him like a physical blow. The king is dead. And to make matters worse, the crown prince also fell in the attack. Kazuma can only listen, the weight of their loss sinking in. Arias looks away, her voice heavy with sorrow, but she mentions that there is still one hope left for them. The sudden revelation catches Kazuma completely off guard. Arias seems confused by his sudden shock. He asks if she's saying the crown prince is still alive. But she clarifies that the man she calls brother is actually her cousin. A wave of relief washes over Kazuma's face, a glimmer of hope returning. She confirms that he was away from the capital during the attack, and that he is now their kingdom's last, best hope for survival. Kazuma smiles, relieved that she still has family to rely on. But his relief is cut short as Arias suddenly cries out in pain. The maids can only watch, their faces a mask of pure panic. The top-knotted guard shouts her name, asking what's wrong. She clutches her head, lost in a painful memory of her fallen brother. Kazuma watches, completely lost as her maids try to console her. She begs for the visions to stop, her voice trembling with fear, and finally lets out a desperate scream. Overwhelmed by the trauma, Kazuma rushes to her side, trying to snap her out of the nightmare. He pulls her into a hug as she collapses, calling out her name. He holds her close, asking if she's all right. She apologizes, explaining a strange vision just flashed in her mind. The guard asks if it was just a dream, but Kazuma is still lost. She confirms it was a vision of her brother, the fallen prince. She recalls a dark room filled with a dozen masked figures. In the memory, she was trapped in her bed, completely paralyzed. One of them stepped forward, slowly removing his mask. And as he revealed his face, she realized with horror that it was her own brother. The revelation sends a shockwave through Kazuma. Kazuma asks if her brother was one of the masked men. She confirms this, explaining she was terrified and tried to tell him, but he just gave her a chilling smile, telling her not to worry. The guard wonders what it all means. As she explains, that's when she realized it was a dream. He tells her not to scare them like that, a hint of relief in his voice. Arias apologizes to her maids for causing such a commotion. They all gather around, just glad that she's all right. But Kazuma's eyes narrow, a strange thought taking root. He wonders if her outburst was more than just a bad dream. Then Arias gets an idea, asking if he wants to try using magic. Kazuma is completely baffled by her offer to teach him magic. Arias explains that now that things have calmed down, she can show him how it works. She theorizes his stats are blank simply because he's never been exposed to it. The top-knotted guard claps his hands, calling it a brilliant idea. He gets fired up, realizing that if Kazuma adds magic to his insane strength, he'll be invincible. He urges Kazuma to give it a shot, his enthusiasm a little overwhelming. But Kazuma's expression hardens. He agrees it's worth a try. He nervously asks if she'll really teach him, and Arias just smiles, telling him to leave it to her. She winks, boasting that her magic skills are second to none. The guard is practically vibrating with excitement, eager to see the princess's power in action. Arias begins her lesson, telling him to start by lighting a fire in his heart. Kazuma is understandably confused by this very abstract instruction. She tells him to close his eyes and picture a place of total darkness. He follows her instructions, his mind entering a void, and in that void he imagines a single unlit candle. He pictures himself standing within this mental space. He then imagines pulling out a simple box of matches. He strikes one, and a small flame bursts to life. With a steady hand, he brings the fire to the wick. And just like that, the candle is lit, its flame burning brightly. She tells him to hold that image in his mind, and then to slowly open his eyes. Next, she instructs him to cup his hands together, and to imagine that same flame materializing in his palms. He focuses with all his might, trying to will the fire into existence. But after a moment of intense concentration, absolutely nothing happens. He looks down at his empty hands, wondering if he failed. Arias admits his focus was incredible, but it seems it wasn't enough. The guard suggests they check his status screen again for clues. He pulls up the screen, but Arias notes that it's still the same. Arias comments on his incredible status screen, a little impressed. She tells him that for someone his age, his stats are likely unmatched in the entire world. He's still a bit lost as she marvels at his unbelievably high skill levels, but her eyes suddenly widen with a new, startling realization. She shouts for everyone to wait, completely baffled by what she's seeing. The top-knotted guard points, telling her to look at the experience point column. He stares intently, while Kazuma just looks on, confused as usual. The three of them lean in, their faces a mask of pure shock. The guard can only shout, wondering what on earth this means. Arias explains that the experience points Kazuma needs to level up are different. She explains that every single experience point value is set to 1, a fact that leaves both Kazuma and the guard completely speechless. No matter the skill, no matter the level, it only takes a single point to advance. And in that instant, everything finally clicks into place for Kazuma. He realizes that's why he was leveling up constantly in the middle of a fight. Unlike a normal game, his growth has no limits, no diminishing returns. But he's left with one question. Why does he have this incredible power? Arias suddenly leans against him, letting out an exhausted sigh. She asks just how many more times he plans on completely blowing their minds. He just shrugs as if being a literal cheat code is just a minor inconvenience. Arias confirms that he is indeed a lost one, a person who has wandered into their world. But Kazuma can only wonder why he was given such incredible power. He questions not just how he arrived, but why he was brought here in the first place. But his thoughts are interrupted as Arias bows her head in a deep apology. She feels guilty for dragging him into a war that has nothing to do with him. Kazuma frantically waves his hands, telling her not to worry about it. He just smiles, saying that he believes this was all fated to happen. His simple, unwavering acceptance leaves her completely speechless. The guard reminds them that thanks to the gems, they have the funds to rebuild their kingdom. And Arius admits that without Kazuma, they would have all been lost by now. He frantically insists the gems were on her land anyway. But Arius just looks at him, her expression unreadable. She playfully dismisses his argument, puffing out her cheeks. She points out that he could have kept the entire discovery to himself. The sheer weight of their gratitude is clearly too much for him. He's sweating, his mind completely short-circuiting. Our boy, who can fight A-rank monsters, is defeated by a simple thank you. As they continue, the conversation turns to their destination, Ordena. Arius explains that her aunt married into the Ordena royal family. Kazuma asks if she and her aunt are close, a warm smile on his face. Arius smiles, recalling how close they were in her childhood. Kazuma is relieved to hear she has someone she can count on. She's certain that once they reach Ordena, her aunt will help them. But his expression suddenly shifts to one of alarm. The entire party freezes, their moment of hope shattered. The top-knotted guard shouts that he hears the sound of hooves. He asks Kazuma if he hears it, but our boy hears nothing. Guess his super senses don't include super hearing. The guard confirms it's a massive cavalry, faster than the last. And Kazuma shouts for everyone to hide. The Imperial Army is here. He confirms the sound of hooves, telling everyone to prepare. The others can only stare, stunned by how close the enemy is. But it's already too late. Their pursuers are upon them. The top-knotted guard barks orders to camouflage the carriage. The entire party braces for another desperate fight for survival. They scramble to push the carriage into the dense foliage. With no time to spare, they race for cover. Kazuma directs the princess and her maids to a safer spot. Arius looks back, her face a mask of pure terror. But he grabs her hand, pulling her along with him. He pulls her deeper into the woods, racing for cover. He points them toward a dense thicket, their only hope. He realizes running is impossible. They'll have to wait them out. The ground begins to tremble with the sound of approaching hooves. They dive into the bushes, hoping they won't be seen, and watch as an entire Imperial cavalry thunders past. This isn't just a patrol, it's a full-blown army. A force far larger than anything they've faced before. Arius can only pray as Kazuma watches in disbelief. The top-knotted guard grips his sword, ready for the worst. But Kazuma's resolve is absolute. He will protect them. The soldiers scan the area, their expressions grim. Their leader orders them to press on, certain their targets are close. From their hiding spot, the party holds its breath. Kazuma breathes a sigh of relief as the sound of hooves fades. The main force thunders past, disappearing over the horizon. He smiles, thinking they've made it through unscathed. But a single rider has stayed behind, watching, and his eyes land directly on their expertly hidden carriage. The top-knotted guard's face pales, realizing their cover is blown. Arius can only stare, her face a mask of pure terror. Kazuma realizes they're trapped while the axle is still broken. He prays the last soldier in the patrol didn't notice them. But a sudden sound cuts through the tense silence. His eyes widen as he realizes their luck has just run out. The lone rider has stopped, turning back to investigate. He draws his sword, his horse already turning around. And with a single command, he leads his men back toward them. Kazuma can only watch, realizing they've been found. But his panic quickly hardens into a look of grim resolve. The soldier points directly at their hiding spot, shouting that he's found them. The top-knotted guard watches as the soldiers gather, confirming they heard a noise. The soldiers advance, their leader shouting orders to surround the area. The guard realizes that even if they take out this small group, a signal will bring the entire army back. Kazuma can only watch in horror, wondering what they can possibly do. But a familiar voice tells him there is nothing to fear. It's the same voice that called him a transcendent being. His panic begins to fade, replaced by a grim resolve. He asks the voice what it is, demanding an answer. And the voice tells him that even an army of thousands is no match for him. The voice tells him he'll have to face them eventually. He snaps back to reality, wondering what that voice was. But a new resolve tightens his grip. He knows he can win no matter who the opponent is. He peeks through the leaves at the approaching soldiers. The top-knotted guard watches alongside him, tense. Kazuma turns to the guard, telling him he'll handle this. He tells the others to use the distraction he creates, to get away from the main road and escape. But the guard grabs his arm, saying it's a useless plan. The guard explains that if Kazuma is captured, it's all over. His expression hardens, knowing there's only one way out. As the soldiers close in on their position, Kazuma insists he can handle it, thanking him for the concern. But a shout from the soldiers confirms their carriage has been found. The guard shoves Kazuma, yelling at him to run. He watches as the guard turns to face the enemy alone. A lone warrior, ready to make the ultimate sacrifice. But Kazuma isn't about to let that happen. Spinning with the cursed spear, he meets the first soldier head-on, refusing to abandon his friends. He deflects their attacks with a surprising ferocity. He moves like a blur, a whirlwind of controlled chaos. The soldiers are completely overwhelmed by his sudden assault. He shatters their blades with the force of his strikes. The soldiers can only stare in disbelief at his raw power, and in an instant, the entire squad is defeated. But his victory is cut short by a sudden, horrifying realization. The princess and the guard are using the chaos to escape. The guard is acting as a decoy, leading the remaining soldiers away. Kazuma understands the plan, his expression hardening with resolve. He decides to swing his spear as much as he wants, and unleashes a whirlwind of attacks on the remaining soldiers. But he's suddenly stopped by an unexpected sight. The main Imperial cavalry has returned to investigate the commotion. He realizes he's completely surrounded with nowhere to run, and their leader is a familiar, sadistic face. It's Souza, the spearman he just defeated. The man can only stare, his eyes wide with disbelief. He can't comprehend how Kazuma is still standing. Kazuma just glares back, realizing they're both survivors. Souza screams in disbelief, refusing to accept that he could be defeated. He demands to know how Kazuma survived the wyvern poison, but Kazuma just explains that he got used to it. The explanation, or lack thereof, sends Souza into a furious rage. But Kazuma now holds the legendary blue dragon spear. Souza demands he return it, but Kazuma isn't about to give up his new toy. The spearman roars that he'll take it back by force. He pulls out a different spear, claiming it's his original weapon. He raises the weapon high, preparing for another attack. The two warriors face off, Souza vowing to make Kazuma a sacrifice to his spear, and with a furious cry, he lunges forward to begin the rematch. The banner of the Imperial army flutters in the wind. Kazuma watches in shock as Souza turns to face a new arrival. An entire cavalry of black-armored knights stands at the ready. He wonders who these new, imposing soldiers could be. Souza holds the banner, his expression suddenly serious. His eyes are fixed on the figure who has just appeared. He announces that he's been waiting for his commander. A towering figure in horned black armor steps forward. Kazuma can only stare, realizing he's the new target. The commander acknowledges that Kazuma easily defeated Souza. Souza screams that he was just caught off guard. But the commander questions his subordinate's excuse. He heard Souza was defeated even with his special spear. Kazuma can only watch, the pressure mounting. He realizes this new opponent is on another level entirely. The commander notes that for Kazuma to beat an A-rank fighter is impressive. He introduces himself as Kaiser Grunwald and asks for the boy's name. Kazuma is stunned, realizing this is the leader of the Empire's strongest division. He gives his name, Nakamichi Kazuma, wondering what the commander finds so amusing. Grunwald's eyes narrow, his focus fixed entirely on the boy. Kazuma can only stare, the sweat beading on his face. Souza shouts that he's in the presence of greatness. The S-rank knight who leads the Empire's strongest division. Kazuma tries to process this, wondering if S-rank means level 1000. Grunwald calmly tells him not to be intimidated by a simple title. But Kazuma remembers his own little secret. His leveling system is completely broken. He realizes he can just grind for experience in the middle of the fight. And with that thought, his fear is replaced by a defiant glare. Grunwald seems almost pleased by his sudden change in attitude. He orders Souza to capture the princess, declaring that he will handle Kazuma himself. Souza steps forward, vowing to take responsibility for this fight. But Grunwald coldly tells him not to repeat himself. The spearman can only agree, his pride clearly wounded. He turns and orders his men to pursue the princess down the path. His eyes are fixed on his new, more important target. Kazuma's face twists with panic, realizing what this means. He tries to rush past Grunwald, refusing to let them go. But the commander's presence is an immovable, terrifying wall. And in an instant, Kazuma is sent flying backward. He can only watch as Souza and his men race past him. He's stunned by the sheer force of that single blow. The commander's aura is a terrifying, living shadow, and Grunwald seems amused by his attempt to just run past him. But Kazuma knows he has to get past this monster to save Arius. His eyes fall on the commander's colossal blade, realizing it's no ordinary weapon. He knows if he can just block that first strike, he'll level up.